He wasn't supposed to inherit anything. Not the house, not the silence, not the weight that came with both. The letter arrives on a grey morning that smells like rain and old memories, the kind that linger just long enough to remind a man of everything he's trying to forget. Ethan Cole stands at the edge of a gravel driveway somewhere off a quiet stretch of North Carolina back road, boots still carrying the dust of places he doesn't talk about, fingers tightening around an envelope stamped with a lawyer's seal he almost didn't open. Beside him, Rex sits still, ears forward, amber eyes locked on the mansion ahead like he already knows something Ethan doesn't. The house rises from the land like it's been waiting, tall and weathered, white paint peeling into soft curls that catch the wind, windows dark as if they've been holding their breath for years. It isn't abandoned. Not exactly. It feels paused. Like a story left unfinished. Ethan exhales slowly, the kind of breath that comes from a man who has learned not to expect good news, and looks down at the final line he read 3 times just to be sure it didn't change. To my grandson, Ethan Cole. The house is yours. Trust the dog. He almost laughs when he first sees it, a dry, humorless sound that dies before it leaves his throat. His grandmother had always been quiet, the kind of woman who spoke in half sentences and long looks, who never explained herself and never needed to. He hadn't seen her in years. Not since before the deployments. Not since before everything inside him went quiet too. And now this. No money. No explanation. Just a house no one else in the family wanted and a message that didn't make sense. Rex shifts slightly, paws pressing into the gravel, a low sound building in his chest, not a growl, not quite, but something close enough to make Ethan notice. You feel that too? Ethan mutters, voice rough from disuse more than anything else. The dog doesn't look at him. Doesn't need to. His focus stays on the front door, tall, wooden, slightly ajar like it was left open for someone who never came back. The wind moves through the trees behind them, carrying the faint scent of damp wood and something older, something buried beneath years of dust and quiet. Ethan has walked into worse places. He's kicked in doors that led to things no one should have to see. But this is different. There's no threat he can name. No enemy he can prepare for. Just a feeling. The kind that settles into your bones before your mind can catch up. He steps forward anyway. Because that's what he's always done. One step, then another. Rex moves first. Not fast. Not reckless. Just certain. The kind of certainty that doesn't ask for permission. The dog crosses the threshold before Ethan does, disappearing briefly into the dim interior where light struggles to reach, and for a second, just a second, Ethan hesitates. The air changes the moment he gets close, cooler, heavier, like the house is breathing out something it's been holding onto for a long time. He pushes the door open wider, the hinges letting out a slow, tired creak that echoes deeper than it should, and steps inside. The scent hits him first. Dust. Old wood. Metal. And something else beneath it all. Familiar. Not from this place. From somewhere else. Somewhere he thought he left behind. Rex stands in the center of the entryway, perfectly still, head tilted slightly toward a hallway that disappears into shadow. His tail doesn't move. His posture is alert, deliberate, like he's listening to something Ethan can't hear. All right, Ethan says quietly, more to himself than anything else. Let's see what she left us. But the words don't feel right the moment they leave him. Because standing there, in that house that no one wanted, with a dog that refuses to look away from the dark, Ethan realizes something simple and unsettling at the same time. This doesn't feel like something he inherited. It feels like something he was chosen for. The floor answers his first step with a low hollow echo that travels farther than it should, as if the house is larger on the inside than the shape it showed from the road, and Ethan pauses just long enough to listen to the silence that follows, because it is not empty, it is layered, like something resting beneath it waiting to be noticed, and Rex moves again without hesitation, slow and deliberate, nose low, tracing a path across the worn wooden boards as though following a scent that has not faded with time but settled into it, something carried in the grain itself, and Ethan shuts the door behind him out of instinct, the soft click sounding final in a way that makes his shoulders tighten before he can stop it. Not fear exactly, just awareness, the kind that never really leaves a man who has spent years walking into unknown rooms. The entryway opens into a wide hall, dust hanging in the air like fine ash caught in a shaft of pale light slipping through a tall window, and every surface carries the quiet signature of abandonment without decay, furniture still upright, frames still straight on the walls, a coat draped over a chair as if someone intended to come back before the day ended and simply did not, and Ethan's eyes move across it all with a trained steadiness, cataloguing exits, distances, shapes, even now, even here. While something else inside him, something softer and harder to name, begins to stir. Rex stops near the base of a staircase, head lifting slightly, ears adjusting, and then he turns not toward the stairs but toward a narrow corridor to the left, one that seems darker than the rest, not because of shadow alone but because the light does not reach it the same way, as if it is being held back, and Ethan notices that immediately. "You are not here for the view, are you?" he says quietly, more breath than voice, and Rex flicks his ear once in response, already moving again, already committed to whatever it is he senses ahead. Ethan follows, boots pressing into the floor with measured weight, and the corridor narrows just enough to shift the air, cooler here, heavier, carrying a faint metallic scent beneath the dust and wood, something he recognizes without placing, something tied to memory that does not belong to this house but feels like it does. Halfway down, a series of photographs line the wall, old black and white frames, glass slightly clouded with age, and Ethan slows without meaning to, drawn to them in the way a man is drawn to something familiar before he understands why. A younger version of his grandmother stands in the first, not smiling, just looking at the camera with that same quiet certainty he remembers, but she is not alone. There is a dog beside her, a German shepherd, posture sharp, eyes forward, and in the next frame there are more, 2 dogs now, then 3, different years, same stance, same purpose, and something about that detail settles deeper than it should. Rex pauses beneath the photographs, glancing up once, then back down the hall, as if acknowledging something unspoken, and Ethan feels it then, a subtle shift, like stepping into a story already in motion. At the end of the corridor sits a closed door, darker wood, heavier, the handle worn smooth in a way that suggests it was used more than the others, and Rex approaches it slowly, not with caution but with recognition, nose lifting, drawing in the air just in front of it, and then he sits. Not waiting. Not uncertain. Just still. Ethan stops a few feet behind him, eyes narrowing slightly, because this is not random behavior, this is a signal, one he has trusted before in places far less forgiving than this. "All right," he murmurs, the word grounding him more than the space does, and he reaches for the handle, fingers brushing the cool metal that feels colder than the rest of the house, as if it has not warmed in years, and for a moment, just before he turns it, something inside him tightens, not from fear but from recognition of a different kind, the kind that tells him whatever is behind this door was never meant for everyone, only for someone willing to listen to what cannot speak, and beside him. Rex remains perfectly still, as if he already knows that this is where the house begins to tell the truth. The handle does not resist when Ethan turns it, and that unsettles him more than if it had, because doors that matter usually ask for effort, for intention, for something to prove you belong on the other side, but this one opens with a quiet ease that feels almost like permission, and the air behind it shifts immediately, cooler, sharper, carrying a scent that cuts through the dust like a memory that refuses to fade. Rex stands the moment the door moves, stepping forward without waiting, crossing the threshold as though he has done it before, even though he has not, and Ethan follows close behind, eyes adjusting as the light changes, dimmer here, narrower, the space not large but dense with something he cannot yet name. The room is not what he expected. No grand furniture, no hidden wealth laid out in obvious display, just a workroom, deliberate and functional, walls lined with shelves that hold neatly arranged boxes, metal containers, and stacks of papers bound with care, not abandoned, not forgotten, but preserved. A single desk sits near the far wall beneath a small window, its glass slightly fogged with age, letting in a thin strip of daylight that falls across the surface like a spotlight on something waiting to be seen. Rex moves straight to the center of the room, then stops, nose lowering toward the floor, tracing a slow circle as if mapping something invisible, and Ethan watches him, recognizing the pattern, not random, not curiosity, but search, guided by something deeper than instinct alone. What did she leave here? Ethan murmurs, voice softer now, not out of fear, but out of respect for the quiet that fills the space, and he steps closer to the desk, fingers brushing across the surface where a thin layer of dust gives way to a clean outline, as if something had been moved recently, or perhaps never allowed to settle. There is a small wooden box placed at the center, simple, unmarked, the kind of object that does not draw attention unless you are looking for it, and beside it, a folded piece of paper, aged but intact, his name written across it in handwriting he recognizes immediately, steady, precise, unmistakably hers. Ethan pauses before touching it, the moment stretching just long enough for the past to press in, for the memory of her voice, quiet and certain, to echo in a way that does not quite feel like memory at all. Rex lets out a low breath behind him, not a sound of warning, but of insistence, and Ethan nods once, almost unconsciously, before picking up the letter. The paper feels heavier than it should, like it carries more than ink, and when he unfolds it, the room seems to still even further, as if listening. If you are reading this, the first line begins, and Ethan's jaw tightens slightly, not from tension, but from recognition of a tone he has not heard in years, direct, without explanation, as if she expected him to understand without needing to ask. His eyes move quickly, then slower, each word settling deeper than the last, and something inside him shifts with it, something that had been quiet for a long time. Behind him, Rex's movement changes, no longer circling, no longer searching, but fixed now on a single point near the far corner of the room, where the floorboards meet at a subtle seam that most would never notice, but the dog does not look away. Ethan lowers the letter slightly, glancing back, and follows Rex's gaze, the connection immediate, undeniable, the same silent communication that has carried them through places where words were never enough. Of course, Ethan says under his breath, the faintest trace of something almost like understanding forming at the edges of his voice, and he steps away from the desk, toward the corner, toward the place where the house seems to be holding something just beneath the surface. The boards there are slightly different, not in color, not in shape, but in the way they sit, as if placed with intention rather than design, and when Ethan crouches, pressing his hand lightly against them, he feels it, the faint give of something not fully anchored, something meant to be found but only by someone who knew where to look, or someone guided by something that did. Rex lowers himself beside the spot, eyes steady, breath slow, waiting, not for instruction, but for confirmation, and Ethan exhales quietly, the sound carrying a weight he does not fully understand yet, before sliding his fingers along the edge of the board, testing it, feeling the truth of it beneath his hand. This was never just a house. And whatever his grandmother left behind, it was not meant to stay hidden forever. It was meant to be uncovered, one careful step at a time, by someone willing to trust what could not be explained. The wood shifts under Ethan's fingers with a soft, reluctant creak, not resisting but not yielding easily either, as if it has waited a long time to be moved and is not entirely sure it should be, and he pauses for just a moment, palm resting flat against the grain, feeling the faint vibration of something hollow beneath, something hidden with purpose rather than carelessness, and Rex inches closer, lowering his head until his nose nearly touches the seam, breath slow and steady, as if urging without urgency, a quiet insistence that does not rush but does not waver. Ethan exhales through his nose, steadying himself, then slides his fingers deeper along the edge until he finds a slight indentation, barely noticeable unless you are searching for it, and he presses, testing, feeling the give, before lifting carefully, the board rising just enough to reveal darkness beneath, a narrow space carved between the supports of the floor, precise, intentional, and undisturbed. The scent rises immediately, stronger here, metal and time, layered with something faintly familiar that tightens something in his chest before he can place it, and he sets the board aside with care, leaning it against the wall as though the house itself deserves that respect, before reaching into the opening. His hand finds cold metal first, smooth and solid, and he wraps his fingers around it, lifting slowly, revealing a long, narrow container, military green, edges worn but intact, the kind of case designed to protect something that matters, something that cannot be replaced. Rex shifts slightly as it emerges, eyes fixed, body still, as if recognizing not the object but the meaning behind it, and Ethan sets it gently on the floor beside the opening, kneeling fully now, the weight of the moment settling into his posture without force. "You knew," he says quietly, not accusing, not surprised, just acknowledging, and Rex blinks once, calm, steady, present. The latches on the case are stiff but functional, and when Ethan flips them open, the sound is sharper than anything else in the room, a clean metallic click that echoes in a way that feels almost ceremonial, and for a second, he does not open it, fingers resting on the lid, because something inside him understands that whatever is in here will not be simple, will not be easy, and will not leave him the same as before. Then he lifts it. Inside, everything is arranged with precision. No clutter. No excess. A folded American flag rests to one side, edges crisp despite the years, beneath it a set of military dog tags, the metal dulled but unmistakable, and beside them, a sealed envelope, thicker than the first, marked with no name, only a date written in the same steady hand he saw earlier. Ethan's gaze lingers on the tags, something in his expression shifting, not shock, not confusion, but recognition that has not yet found its words, and he reaches for them slowly, lifting the chain, letting the metal fall against his palm with a soft, familiar weight. The name etched into them is not one he knows, not from family, not from memory, and yet the format, the details, everything about them speaks a language he understands without needing translation. Rex lowers himself beside him, close but not touching, eyes flicking once from the tags to Ethan's face, reading him in that quiet way only a dog can, and Ethan swallows once, steady, grounding himself before setting the tags back into the case exactly where they were, because this is not his yet, not fully, not until he understands. His attention shifts to the envelope, and when he picks it up, the paper feels heavier than the last, as though it carries something more deliberate, more final, and he turns it over once, noting the date again, older than he expected, older than some of the memories he still carries clearly. "You kept this," he murmurs, the thought forming slowly, not directed at Rex, not even fully directed at his grandmother, but at the space itself, at the quiet intention behind it all. He opens the envelope carefully, sliding the contents free, and the room seems to narrow again, not physically, but in focus, as if everything outside this moment has stepped back to make room for what is about to be revealed. Behind him, the house remains still, patient, holding its breath the same way it has for years, waiting not for discovery alone, but for understanding, and as Ethan begins to read, one truth settles in before the words even fully reach him. This was never about inheritance. It was about something that had been waiting for the right person to carry it forward. The paper unfolds with a soft, deliberate sound that seems louder than it should be, and Ethan's eyes move across the first line slowly, not because he cannot read it, but because something in the weight of the words asks him to take his time, to understand rather than simply see, and the handwriting, steady and unmistakable, carries the same quiet authority he remembers from years ago, the kind that never raised its voice yet was never questioned. "If you found this," it begins, and Ethan exhales faintly, the corners of his jaw tightening just enough to show he already understands this was not left by accident, not a forgotten relic but a message placed with intention, meant to be discovered only under the right circumstances, only by someone willing to follow what cannot be explained. Rex remains beside him, still as stone, his presence steady, grounding, the soft rhythm of his breathing the only movement in the room as Ethan continues. The letter does not rush. It does not try to impress. It simply tells the truth, piece by piece, as if the truth itself had been waiting for permission to exist again. His grandmother writes of years Ethan never knew, years before he was born, when the house was not silent but alive with purpose, when it served as a place not of wealth but of refuge, a place where those who had nowhere else to go could disappear long enough to be remembered properly. She writes of a man, a Marine, not family, not by blood, but by something she describes as a promise made when no one else was watching, and Ethan's grip on the paper tightens slightly, because he knows that kind of promise, knows what it costs to keep it. The name appears again, the same one etched into the dog tags resting beside him, and now it carries weight, not just a name but a story, one that was never finished the way it should have been, one that was set aside, not out of neglect, but out of fear, out of the quiet decision to protect something fragile from being misunderstood. The letter explains that the man had been brought here under circumstances that could not be explained publicly, that there were questions no one wanted to ask and answers no one was ready to accept, and so the truth was placed here instead, hidden not to be forgotten, but to be kept safe until someone with the right kind of eyes could see it clearly. Ethan's gaze shifts briefly to Rex, then back to the page, and something settles deeper inside him, something that feels less like curiosity and more like responsibility. His grandmother's words do not accuse. They do not demand. They simply trust. You will know what to do, she writes, and the simplicity of it lands heavier than any instruction could have, because it does not tell him how, it only reminds him who he is. A faint sound moves through the house then, not sudden, not sharp, just the quiet settling of old wood adjusting to the present, and Ethan pauses, listening, the moment stretching just enough for him to feel the space around him again, to remember where he is, what this place holds. Rex lifts his head slightly, ears turning, then relaxes again, as if confirming there is nothing to fear, only something to understand. Ethan lowers the letter slowly, eyes drifting back to the contents of the case, to the flag, to the tags, to the space that now feels less like a discovery and more like a handoff, something passed forward across time without ceremony, without witness, except for the one person meant to receive it. He reaches for the tags again, this time holding them a little longer, letting the cool metal rest in his palm as if trying to understand the life they once represented, the story they still carry, and for a moment, just a moment, the distance between past and present feels thinner, as if the silence in the room is not empty at all, but full of something patient, something waiting not to be found, but to be honored. Ethan exhales quietly, the sound steady, resolved, and when he looks up again, his eyes are different, not softer, not harder, but clearer, as if the path ahead has begun to take shape in a way that does not require explanation, only action, and beside him, Rex shifts closer, just enough to press lightly against his side, a silent acknowledgement that whatever comes next, they will not face it alone. The words stay with him even after he lowers the letter, not echoing, not repeating, but settling somewhere deeper, like something that has finally found the place it was meant to rest, and Ethan remains still for a moment longer than necessary, not because he is unsure, but because he understands now that moving forward is no longer about curiosity, it is about commitment. Rex shifts beside him, not impatient, not urging, just present, his quiet weight a steady reminder that whatever this is, it is real, and it is already unfolding whether Ethan chooses to act or not. The room feels different now, not as closed, not as distant, as if something has been acknowledged and, in return, something else has begun to open. Ethan carefully folds the letter along its original lines, not rushing, not careless, and places it back into the envelope before setting it beside the case, his movements precise, almost ceremonial, as if instinct alone tells him that respect matters here. He reaches again for the contents, this time lifting the folded flag with both hands, feeling its weight, its structure, the quiet dignity it carries even in silence, and for a second, his expression shifts, something personal crossing his face, something tied to memories he does not speak of, moments where symbols like this were not just objects, but promises carried through uncertainty. He sets it back gently, then looks again at the dog tags, turning them slightly so the light from the window catches the etched letters more clearly, and this time he reads them slowly, not just the name, but the numbers, the details, committing them to memory without effort, because some things, once seen, do not need to be written down to be remembered. Rex stands then, sudden but not sharp, his posture alert again, head turning toward the hallway beyond the room, ears lifting as if catching something just out of reach, and Ethan notices immediately, his focus shifting with him, the moment of stillness breaking into motion without tension. "You hear something," Ethan says quietly, not expecting an answer, just acknowledging the shift, and Rex takes a few steps toward the door, pausing only once to glance back, not to ask, but to confirm. Ethan rises smoothly, the case still open behind him, the board still leaning against the wall, the room left exactly as it was, because something tells him this is not finished, only paused. The hallway feels narrower on the way out, the light dimmer now that the sun has shifted slightly outside, stretching shadows across the floor in long, quiet lines that move with time rather than with anything alive, and yet the air feels charged in a way it did not before, not dangerous, not threatening, just aware. Rex moves ahead, slower this time, more deliberate, nose lifting occasionally as if testing the air for something new, something that was not there when they first entered, and Ethan follows, steps measured, mind already adjusting, shifting from discovery to understanding, from observation to purpose. They pass the photographs again, and this time Ethan slows just slightly, his eyes catching a detail he had missed before, something small, almost invisible, a figure in the background of one of the frames, blurred but present, standing just behind his grandmother and the dogs, not centered, not acknowledged, but there, and something about that detail connects immediately to the name he now carries in his mind, a thread pulling tighter without explanation. Rex stops at the base of the stairs, then turns, not upward, but toward another section of the house, a door partially closed, lighter than the others, less worn, as if it had been used differently, less frequently, or perhaps more recently, and he approaches it with the same quiet certainty as before, lowering his head, listening not with his ears alone, but with something deeper, something that has guided him since the moment they arrived. Ethan watches him for a second, then steps closer, hand reaching for the handle without hesitation this time, because whatever this is, whatever path has been set in motion, it is no longer something he questions. It is something he follows. And as his fingers close around the handle, one thought settles clearly, steady and undeniable. This house is not revealing its secrets all at once. It is leading them, step by step, through a truth that has been waiting not just to be found, but to be understood in the only way that matters. The handle turns easier than expected, and the door opens inward with a soft breath of air that feels warmer than the rest of the house, not by temperature alone but by something harder to define, something lived in, something remembered, and Ethan pauses just inside the threshold as Rex steps ahead, slower now, more measured, his usual certainty replaced with something that looks almost like recognition mixed with restraint. The room is smaller than the others, but not empty, not forgotten, arranged with a kind of quiet care that suggests it was not meant to be hidden forever, only kept separate, protected from the rest of the world until the right moment arrived. A narrow bed sits against the far wall, neatly made, the blanket folded with precise corners that have not shifted in years, and beside it, a simple wooden chair, worn smooth at the edges as if someone had spent long hours sitting there, waiting, thinking, or perhaps just existing in the kind of stillness that comes when there is nowhere else to go. Light filters in through a single window, thinner here, softer, catching the faint dust in the air and turning it into something almost gentle, and for the first time since entering the house, Ethan feels something different beneath the weight of it all. Not tension. Not unease. Something closer to presence. Rex moves toward the bed, stopping a few feet away, his posture lowering slightly, not in fear but in respect, as if the space itself holds meaning he can sense but not explain, and Ethan follows more slowly, his eyes taking in the details one by one, the careful placement of objects, the absence of disorder, the quiet suggestion that someone had once lived here not as a guest, but as someone being protected. On the wall above the bed hangs a single photograph, framed simply, the glass clean despite the years, and Ethan steps closer, drawn to it without knowing why, until the image comes into focus and the connection lands with quiet certainty. It is the same man from the blurred figure in the earlier photograph, now clear, standing beside his grandmother, not centered, not highlighted, but present in a way that feels intentional, his posture straight, his expression calm, the kind of stillness Ethan recognizes immediately, not from peace, but from endurance. There is a dog beside him too, another German shepherd, different from Rex, but carrying the same alertness, the same quiet intelligence in its eyes, and something about that detail tightens the space in Ethan's chest just enough to matter. "You stayed here," Ethan says under his breath, not asking, not guessing, just acknowledging what the room already tells him, and Rex lets out a slow exhale, settling onto the floor beside the bed as if confirming it in the only way he knows how. Ethan's gaze shifts downward, and near the foot of the bed, partially tucked beneath it, sits a small wooden trunk, darker than the rest of the furniture, its surface marked by faint scratches and worn edges that speak of use rather than neglect, and he crouches carefully, pulling it forward with both hands, the movement quiet, deliberate, as if the room itself requires that level of care. The lid is not locked. It lifts easily, revealing a collection of items arranged with the same precision as everything else in the house, letters, photographs, folded documents, each placed as though they mattered, not because of what they were worth, but because of what they meant. Ethan picks up one of the photographs first, his eye scanning the image, then narrowing slightly as recognition begins to form, not from memory, but from pattern, from the way the pieces he has seen so far are starting to align into something larger, something that was never meant to stay buried. Behind him, the house remains quiet, but no longer distant, no longer watching from afar. Now it feels closer, almost present, as if each room, each object, each detail has been guiding him here, not to reveal everything at once, but to show him just enough to understand the shape of the truth. Rex lifts his head slightly, eyes steady on Ethan, and in that silent exchange, something unspoken passes between them, not a command, not a question, just a shared understanding that whatever this place holds, whatever story it has been protecting, they are now part of it, not as visitors, but as the ones meant to carry it forward. The photograph in Ethan's hand feels lighter than it should, but the meaning inside it carries weight, the kind that does not press down all at once, but settles slowly, layer by layer, until it changes how you see everything that came before. The man in the image stands beside his grandmother, not close, not distant, just present in a way that suggests trust rather than familiarity, and the dog at his side mirrors that same quiet stance, alert but calm, as if both of them understood something about this place that Ethan is only beginning to grasp. He lowers the photo slightly, eyes drifting back to the trunk, to the other items waiting inside, and something in his chest tightens, not from fear, but from the realization that this is no longer a mystery to solve, it is a story to carry. Rex remains near the bed, watching, his gaze steady, patient, giving Ethan the space to move through this at his own pace, the same way he always has, never rushing, never pulling, only guiding when it matters. Ethan reaches into the trunk again, this time lifting a stack of letters bound together with a thin piece of faded twine, the edges worn but intact, and as he loosens it, the faint scent of paper long kept safe rises into the air, mixing with the quiet stillness of the room. The first letter is dated years back, older than the one his grandmother left him, and the handwriting is different, sharper, more angular, but careful, deliberate, like someone who chose every word with intention. He begins to read, and the room seems to draw in closer around him, not closing, but focusing, narrowing to the space between his eyes and the page. The man writes about the house, not as a hiding place, but as a pause, a space between what was and what could still be, a place where he was given time, not to disappear, but to be remembered properly, to have his story held until it could be told the right way. Ethan's breathing slows as he reads, each line unfolding not just information, but perspective, a quiet reshaping of everything he assumed about why this place existed. The man writes about the woman who helped him, not naming her as a savior, but as something steadier, something more grounded, someone who did not ask questions she did not need answered, but who understood what mattered without needing it explained. He writes about the dog, about the way it never left his side, about the way it watched the doors, the windows, the quiet spaces in between, not with fear, but with purpose, as if it knew that loyalty was not just about staying, but about seeing what others could not. Ethan pauses there, eyes lifting slowly toward Rex, and for a moment, the connection is unmistakable, not between the dogs themselves, but between the role they carry, the way they move through the world, guided by something deeper than instruction. Rex does not move, but his eyes hold steady, and Ethan understands without needing words that this has never been coincidence. He looks back down at the letter, continuing, and the tone shifts slightly, not darker, not heavier, but more certain, as if the man knew his time there was not permanent, as if he understood that what mattered was not how long he stayed, but what would be done with what he left behind. The final lines are simple, almost quiet in their delivery, but they settle deeper than anything before them. He writes that truth does not need to be loud to matter, that sometimes it is enough for it to be carried by someone willing to listen, someone who understands that honoring a life is not about changing the past, but about refusing to let it be forgotten. Ethan lowers the letter slowly, the paper resting in his hands as his eyes drift across the room again, but everything looks different now, not because it has changed, but because he has, because the pieces that once felt scattered now form something whole, something deliberate, something entrusted. He gathers the letters carefully, placing them back into the trunk with the same precision they were kept in, not out of obligation, but out of understanding, and as he closes the lid gently, the sound is soft, final in a way that does not end something, but completes a step. Rex rises then, stretching once before stepping closer, brushing lightly against Ethan's side, and this time, Ethan does not just notice it, he responds, his hand resting briefly against the dog's neck, grounding himself in the present before looking back toward the doorway. The house is no longer quiet in the same way. It is not empty. It is not waiting. It is resolved in a way that only comes when something long held has finally been seen. And standing there, in a room that was never meant for him but was always meant to find him, Ethan understands that what he carries now is not a burden. It is a choice. The house exhales with the slow patience of something that has finally been understood, and Ethan stands in the doorway for a moment longer than he needs to, not because he is unsure of what comes next, but because he knows that once he steps forward, he will not be the same man who walked in. The air feels lighter now, not empty, not hollow, but settled, as if every room has released what it was holding and no longer needs to keep its silence guarded. Rex moves ahead first, as he always has, but this time there is no urgency in his steps, no searching, no quiet tension in the way his body carries itself, only a steady calm, the kind that comes when something unfinished has finally found its place. Ethan follows, passing through the hallway once more, the photographs no longer distant fragments but pieces of a story that now feels whole, each image carrying weight not because it demands attention, but because it has been seen and acknowledged. He pauses briefly at the frame with the man standing just behind his grandmother, and this time, there is no question in his eyes, no need to look closer, because he already knows. "You are not forgotten," he says quietly, the words not spoken for anyone to hear, but meant all the same, and something in the stillness of the house seems to accept it. They move back into the main room, the light now stretching further across the floor as the day shifts outside, shadows softening, edges less sharp, and Ethan glances once toward the corridor where the hidden room waits, not with hesitation, but with a quiet understanding that some things do not need to be revisited to remain present. The case, the letters, the room, all of it remains where it is, not abandoned, not left behind, but held in the place it belongs, because the purpose was never to take it away, it was to carry what it meant forward. Rex stops near the front door, turning slightly as if to check that Ethan is still there, still moving, and Ethan nods faintly, a small gesture that carries more certainty than anything he has done since arriving. He reaches for the door, fingers resting briefly on the handle, feeling the warmth of it now, no longer cold, no longer distant, and when he opens it, the outside air meets him with a softness that feels different than when he first arrived, the scent of rain still lingering, but lighter now, clearer. The gravel beneath his boots sounds familiar again as he steps out, the weight of the house behind him no longer pressing, but standing, quiet and steady, as if it will remain exactly as it is until it is needed again. He pauses at the edge of the driveway, looking back once, not out of doubt, but out of recognition, the way a man looks at something that has changed him without needing to say how. Rex stands beside him, close enough that their shadows overlap in the late afternoon light, and for a moment, neither of them moves. There is no rush. No urgency. Just the quiet understanding that whatever was meant to be found has been found, and whatever was meant to be carried has already begun. Ethan reaches into his pocket slowly, pulling out the dog tags he kept with him, the metal catching the light for just a second before he closes his hand around them again, not as a possession, but as a promise, something he does not need to display to honor. He takes one more breath, steady and grounded, then turns toward the road ahead, the path stretching out not with answers, but with purpose, the kind that does not need to be explained to be followed. Behind him, the house stands silent, but no longer waiting. And as Ethan walks forward, Rex at his side, one truth settles gently, without force, without demand, but with a quiet certainty that will not leave him. Some stories are not meant to be told loudly. They are meant to be carried, one step at a time, by those who are willing to listen, and by those who understand that loyalty does not end when a life does. It continues, in the choices we make, in the truths we protect, and in the quiet ways we remember what others tried to leave behind.